Cleopatra's War for Egypt, the last pharaoh. The desert remembers everything. It remembers the rise of kings and the fall of dynasties. And in the shifting sands between the Nile and the sea, the desert remembers her, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Her name was Cleopatra VII. Not the seductress whispered about in shallow legends, but the scholar, the strategist, the queen, the woman who spoke 9 languages and ruled a kingdom surrounded by enemies. This is her story. A story of war, a story of love, a story of impossible choices. This is Cleopatra's War for Egypt. Her exile had come swiftly. Her brother, Ptolemy XIII, only 10 years old and controlled by greedy advisors, had forced her out, accusing her of trying to seize full power. His regent, the cunning eunuch Pothinus, saw Cleopatra's brilliance as a threat. She had left the palace with only a few loyal servants and a camel loaded with scrolls and gold. But Cleopatra did not weep. She would return. She would reclaim Egypt. The desert wind whispered to her, "A queen does not bow, a queen rises." Meanwhile, in Alexandria, the world shifted. A Roman general fresh from victory, carrying the weight of the world, stepped onto Egyptian soil. Julius Caesar. He had come to Egypt not for conquest, but for debt. Egypt was too valuable to leave unstable. He looked upon Alexandria with awe. But Caesar saw something deeper, a kingdom on the brink of civil war. When he summoned the ruling monarchs to his presence, Ptolemy XIII arrived in all the pomp his advisors could muster. But Cleopatra did not yet. Her entrance would be remembered for thousands of years. It was night. A storm rolled over Alexandria. Thunder echoed across the harbor, and Caesar worked late into the night, reviewing documents in the palace. A knock came. A dusty merchant entered, carrying a large rolled carpet, supposedly a gift. The carpet hit the floor, unfurled. And Cleopatra emerged, rising like a cobra uncurling itself. Her hair was damp from the rain, her eyes alive with fire, and her expression calm but fierce. She wore no jewels, no crown, but she was radiant. Cleopatra bowed slightly, her voice smooth as the Nile before dawn. "Great Caesar, I come to you alone, unarmed, trusting in your honor and wisdom. Egypt bleeds. I ask for your judgment." Caesar froze. Here was a queen who would risk everything, her life, her pride, her future, to reclaim her throne. A woman who walked into danger without fear. A ruler, not a child. "Rise, Cleopatra," he said softly. "You have chosen your moment well. Let us speak of Egypt." And that night, 2 of the most brilliant minds in history formed an alliance that would shake the world. When Ptolemy's advisors learned that Cleopatra had reached Caesar first, they were furious. They demanded Caesar hand her over. They warned him that Egypt would not accept a woman on the throne. Caesar refused all of it. Rome wanted stability. Stability meant Cleopatra and Ptolemy ruling together. The Alexandrians revolted. The palace became a battlefield. Streets erupted with violence. Torches lit the night sky. Caesar commanded Roman legions against Ptolemy's forces. Cleopatra commanded her supporters from within the palace walls. At last, during a chaotic battle near the Nile, Ptolemy XIII attempted to flee. His boat capsized. He drowned, swallowed by the same waters that had nurtured Egypt for millennia. The war raged for months. The royal fleet burned in the harbor. The lighthouse shone through clouds of smoke. And amid the destruction, Cleopatra proved herself more than a figurehead. She was a strategist, calm, calculating, fierce. Cleopatra was queen. Egypt breathes again. Cleopatra was officially crowned Pharaoh of Egypt, co-ruling with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, who served only in name. She wore the ancient crown of the Double Kingdom, Upper Egypt's tall white crown, and Lower Egypt's red crown. Serpents coiled on her brow. Under her rule, trade flourished, taxes stabilized, and the temples received offerings once more. Rome might have thought Cleopatra was merely a puppet, but she was no one's puppet. She was Egypt. Months later, Cleopatra bore a son. She named him Caesarion, Little Caesar. Whispers filled the palace. Rumors spread across 3 continents. Some said he was Caesar's child, some denied it. The boy became a symbol, a bridge between Egypt and Rome, a promise that her dynasty would live on. In Rome, Caesar rose higher than any Roman before him. Dictator, reformer, almost a king in all but name. The Ides of March came, and Caesar fell beneath the blades of his own senators. The news reached Alexandria like a thunderbolt. Cleopatra's protector, her ally, was dead. Rome spiraled into chaos as generals and politicians battled for control. Brutus, Cassius, Lepidus, Octavian, and Mark Antony. Mark Antony, Caesar's most trusted general, summoned Cleopatra to meet him at Tarsus. Some said he wanted answers about Egypt's loyalty. Others said he wanted Cleopatra herself. But Cleopatra was not a woman to be summoned like a servant. She would arrive as a queen. She would arrive as a goddess. Cleopatra sailed up the Cydnus River in a ship covered in gold and purple velvet. Sails fluttered like wings of violet silk. Silver oars dipped into the water to the rhythm of drums. On deck, Cleopatra sat dressed as Isis, goddess of motherhood and magic. Mark Antony, the hardened general who feared nothing, was speechless. "Queen Cleopatra," he said, bowing deeply, "you win the first battle without lifting a sword." They both loved power, spectacle, strategy, and challenge. They were rulers who had survived betrayal, war, and loss. Together, they dreamed not of mere survival, but empire. Antony was married politically to Octavian's sister, Octavia. Whispers of war began. Cleopatra ruled Egypt with unmatched brilliance. She lowered taxes during famine years and expanded trade routes. Alexandria flourished again. Scholars returned to the library. Farmers rejoiced as Nile floods returned to normal. And at Cleopatra's side, Antony found joy he had never known in Rome. Together they had 3 children, 2 twins and a younger son. For a moment, it seemed the world was theirs. But peace is a delicate thing, and Octavian did not forgive betrayal easily. When Antony declared his loyalty to Cleopatra and divorced Octavia, Rome erupted in outrage. Octavian seized the moment. He launched a propaganda war, claiming Cleopatra was a sorceress corrupting Antony. The Senate declared war not on Antony, but on Cleopatra. The last pharaoh of Egypt now faced the might of the Roman Empire. The final battle was decided far from Egypt, off the coast of Greece, near Actium. On Cleopatra's flagship, the queen stood in armor of gold. Her eyes were unshakable. "We fight," she said to her captains. "Not for glory, but for Egypt, for our children, for the right to decide our own destiny." Ships rammed each other. Arrows darkened the sky. Fire spread across the water. When the flames threatened to engulf her flagship, Cleopatra made a fateful decision. She broke through enemy lines and retreated. Antony saw her ship fleeing. His heart overcame his judgment. He abandoned the battle to follow her. Defeated, Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria. Enemies closed in, allies abandoned them. Octavian marched his army toward the Nile. Cleopatra prepared for her final stand. She built defenses along the coast. Still, she would not kneel. A queen dies standing. Cleopatra made one last attempt to negotiate. She wanted her children spared. Antony misinterpreted a messenger's report and believed Cleopatra had taken her own life. Heartbroken, shattered, defeated, he fell on his sword. When Cleopatra heard the truth, she sent for him. He was carried to her hidden mausoleum, bleeding, fading. Cleopatra took him in her arms. His voice was faint. "Do not mourn me, Queen of Kings, live." And with those words, the great general died. Rome had won the battle, but the war for her soul was still to come. Octavian entered Alexandria victorious. He demanded Cleopatra surrender. But the queen had one last weapon, her dignity. She met him dressed in the full regalia of a pharaoh: gold breastplate, crown of cobras, and royal scepter. Octavian expected a broken woman. Instead, he found a queen. He intended to take her to Rome as a trophy for his triumph parade. Cleopatra vowed she would never allow it. Cleopatra retreated to her mausoleum, the monument she had built for her afterlife. There, surrounded by gold, scrolls, and symbols of her reign, she prepared for her final moment. Her loyal handmaidens, Iris and Charmion, stood beside her. A small basket was brought forward, containing figs. Hidden within was an asp, a sacred Egyptian cobra. Then she whispered, "I will not bow." The asp struck. The poison spread swiftly. Iris collapsed beside her. Charmian, barely standing, adjusted the queen's crown. When Roman soldiers broke into the tomb, they found Cleopatra seated upon her golden throne, serene, dignified, divine like a goddess returning to the heavens. Is this not a noble deed? And she too fell. Cleopatra's death marked the end of ancient Egypt's pharaohs. Rome consumed Egypt, but Cleopatra lived on. In stories, in legends, in history. She was not a seductress. She was a ruler, a scholar, a strategist. A woman who fought the greatest empire with her mind and her courage. The Nile still sings her name.